Hello, everyone.
Now we're live.
Oh, now we're live. I tried to talk too soon.
Hey guys, what's going on?
Hey, today we're going to talk about a subject that has everybody stumped. And we're going to try to make some sense of that for you, okay? The most important thing about building a personal brand is really knowing what makes you different from everyone else in your space.
Yep, your POD.
Right. The billion-dollar question, right? Figuring out your point of differentiation can definitely be tough, especially when you have several of them.
Yeah.
And that's normal, by the way. As human beings, we don't just have one point of differentiation. We have multiple.
Yep. Today we're going to break down some of the strategies and questions that'll help you determine your leading POD, point of differentiation. And I know this is really hard for me when I started working with Tanya years ago, nearly 10 years ago. So I had several things going on in my life back then. Number one, I was still a real estate auctioneer and very active in 30 states. And also had the brokerage. It had been kicked off. And so we were doing arm's length transactions, and that was beginning to gain ground again for the first time in like 7 years. And we had a construction company with 6 trucks on the road, and I had investments. So, I didn't know what my POD, I didn't even know I needed a point of differentiation. I've told y'all this story before 100 times. I hired Tanya because I thought I needed marketing. She brought me branding, and the branding is what made a difference in my company. It is. Yeah, you did. Actually, I think about it now. Yeah. I'm glad you did, but I'm glad she did. But it's she brought me branding and then taught me that branding had to come first. So finding that POD for me, that point of differentiation, really was a brain exercise. Big time.
Yeah. So on that note, we're going to walk you through 10 questions that we use to help our clients decide what truly makes them different, right? And we'll talk a little bit on a few of these about like what our answers to these would be. So you can kind of get a good example of where we're going with this, okay?
Yeah. And before we get into it, there's a final very important note that I have to say. You also need to know who it is you're trying to attract. Okay, well, that's a different, we talk about it all the time. We'll teach about that one on another live, because when you determine your point of differentiation, it must be important to your ideal customer, because you can be different, but if it doesn't matter to your ideal customer, you haven't really done anything.
So true.
So we'll talk more about that later, but
okay.
Suffice it to say.
Okay, so number one question you want to ask yourself is, what is your true passion? Okay, and here's a little story for me. I grew up in the radio world. 2 things, that I really learned from that. First of all, that's really where I first understood how a personal brand impacts a business. There were business owners all over the place that were like rock stars. When I went to networking events, people would be scrambling to talk to them, and I thought, what is that person doing differently? And I noticed that a lot of those very celebrity driven business owners were the voice and the face of their own business. And that was really strong for them. They could tell their business story through their marketing, as part of their brand. And the other thing I learned from radio is that I would walk up to these doors and they'd just get slammed in my face over and over and over again. And I learned very quickly, if I wanted to change the way people saw me, I needed to change the way I presented myself. Over the years, that became a true passion for me. And then it turned into much more than that, helping people really unveil their inner star. And that's what I love so much, because let me tell you another thing. I don't mean to elaborate on this first one, but this is so important.
It is.
I literally just got off the phone, and that's why we were 1 minute late here on this live video today. I just got off the phone with this amazing lady in Arizona. And she says to me, I just feel like I'm very plain. There's nothing really special or unique about me. If I had a nickel for every time
we hear it all the time.
That, yes.
All the time.
And I looked at her and I said, "Are you crazy?" And I did, with all the love that I can muster here. I did, because she is one of the most amazing people I have ever met. Not only is she one of the most thoughtful people who made dinner for and took a birthday cake to one of her clients who's in the hospital just yesterday, took another meal to another friend of hers in the hospital, does all sorts of things for her clients long after the transaction is complete. She's amazing. She's a painter. She paints incredibly well, and she does personalized paintings for some of her clients. I mean, I'm just getting started.
Yeah, she's anything but plain.
She's anything but the most thoughtful person I've ever met. And so those are the kind of things that you ask yourself, and don't doubt yourself when it comes to this. Okay, we'll move on.
That's probably that's probably actually good advice right there as we're going through these 10. Is don't doubt yourself.
Don't doubt that there's something very special about you. And that's really why I got into this, because there's something special about every human being. And that goes way back to my childhood too, which if we get a chance to talk about that, we'll talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. You got 1,000 voices in your head. Don't listen to any of the negative ones. All right. True. Number 2, what are your hobbies? This is easy when you're trying to figure out what your point of differentiation is. What are your hobbies? What are the things that you like to do each and every day that if you could put it out there as part of what you do, that you really wouldn't work, right? I never felt like I've worked a day in my life. That's honest truth, because every day I get up is Saturday. Y'all hear me say it all the time, every day Saturday, because I do what I love. I do what I enjoy doing. I consider building companies and helping clients as a hobby, just like and a passion. So I can check off 1 and 2 with what I do for a living.
Yeah. And we have one client who's big into Jeeps, right? He loves his Jeep. He loves riding. He loves he
likes building them.
He does. He does. And that is part of his story and part of his brand and how people recognize him out in the community too. So those hobbies, they can turn into something very recognizable. Here's the real key that you need to remember. If you have a hobby, right, that you want to kind of lead with your brand, just make sure it connects back in some creative way to actually what you do for people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't just go out and say, well, I'm Jeeps, and I love Jeeps, and that's it. That's the end of it.
Yeah,
right?
my point of differentiation is Jeeps.
Yeah, you have to connect that back somehow to what you're known for in your profession. And when you can pull those two things together, it's like magic. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Number 3.
This is where I can really talk about this. How did your upbringing influence you? Okay. We ask people a lot of time on our podcast, was there some person or some event, in your life that really affected you? Right. Well, my upbringing, I was raised in a small town in North Georgia. It's Dawsonville, Georgia. Love this town. And I'm actually headed there today, right after this video, to see my family. But I love the town. It's known as the moonshine capital of the world. My grandfather was an old moonshiner from way back. That has, those are interesting parts and pretty cool parts, I must say. They're really neat. But it also brought with it a dark side of that profession, which was, alcoholism. And it spread everywhere, throughout that region in a certain time period. Well, I learned from that. I wondered, why do people continue to make choices like that? Why do they allow those negative things to influence their life? And I realized at a young age that sometimes the only difference in somebody waiting, for the next drug deal or waiting for rehab and off to college with a bright future is really self-worth. It's how they view themselves and whether or not they know that there's something truly special inside of them. And that to me was how my upbringing influenced me to be able to do what I'm doing today, to unveil people's inner stars. There's a direct connection there, guys. And if you don't think there is, just think back to how you were raised.
There is.
Right?
There is.
It truly is.
Like we deal with people all the time, and they think they do not have anything to offer because they, again, back to like our example of the lady that's plain, right? And you do have something to offer, and what you're offering in that self-worth that you find, and if you can't find it, you call us. We're going to find it for you, because I promise you it's there. That is valuable to your ideal customers. It's very valuable. All right. Number 4 is, what type of education or training do you have? We help brand people. A lot of times they're in a different genre of business than they actually were trained in or educated in. True. But what they were trained in and educated in brings value to their new endeavor. Okay. So that's really important. We really spend a lot of time talking to people about these things because they bring value. Just because, like, if you may have been a top rated salesperson in like the clothing industry, let's just say, or something like that. And now you're a coach, an author, or a speaker about what you learned on that. Even though you were not trained or educated per se as a coach, an author, or speaker, you were using what you were trained in to train other people in that niche, right? So pay attention to your education and what training you have. Not just formal education. Like college, I didn't go to college. I barely got out of high school. But in fact, I think I had to pay my way out. But I have a massive amount of education on the street selling real estate because I've sold more real estate residential transactions than any human being on earth. And so it comes with a massive amount of education, and I can parlay that into being the abundant life broker based on what I've learned from all those years of doing that. So education and training is very big for your POD.
All right. The next one is, do you focus on a specific area or niche or however you want to pronounce it?
Yeah.
I've never pronounced it niche.
I do today, and then tomorrow I call it a niche. I love the riches are into niches.
Right. That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Because you can't say the riches are into niches.
Yeah.
Right.
Michael said something to me one day, and we were sort of like kind of in agreement. And I said, you say tomorrow. You say what? You say tomato. I say tomorrow. Yeah, you say tomato. I say tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know where it came from. It's just it's stuck ever since then for some reason. But a specific area or niche, those are truly important, right? Because that says I have specific expertise in this area, or this type of business, or this type of client, this type of customer. And that one pretty much goes without saying. We won't elaborate too much on that because there's a million different directions that could go in.
Yeah. Well, how about this one? How about was a mentor? Do you have a mentor? I think this is this 5 or 6? This is 6. Was there a mentor who influenced you that could help, that you could help, emulate? Is that the right word?
Emulate, yeah.
Emulate, as your point of differentiation. So a mentor that might have influenced you over the years, and that could be personal or professional.
Yeah. I think one of the coolest answers I ever got back to this question, somebody said books. I've learned from all sorts of mentors. Oh, that's a good one.
Sorry, guys, my phone just went off. I thought I had it. That wasn't the doorbell.
How unprofessional that
was very unprofessional of me.
It was.
Sorry.
Okay, so think about that. Somebody said, books. I have hundreds of mentors because I have read their books. Some are now passed. Some are still living.
That's great.
I thought it was a brilliant answer. And I thought, I'm going to share. And if I could remember who that was right now, I'd give them credit for it. But
yeah, if you're listening, tell us.
That's right. If you're listening right now, tell us if that was you. But it was.
We'll give you the creds, man. We don't steal from people.
A mentor who influenced you can have a lot to do with your direction in life. If we think about all the things, the choices we make today and who we are today, it inevitably comes from our upbringing and the people or events in our life that shifted or changed or caused a turning point to happen in our life, caused us to learn something the hard way, maybe, or taught us, things about how to conduct business, how to treat people with respect and dignity,
how to lead, how to.
And I can say one of the cool things that we see in doing biographies and writing brand messaging for a lot of people that come through our program is that there's a lot of parents and grandparents who fall into that mentoring category.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is amazing. And think about that. They shaped you from your childhood. So that goes back to what we say about going back to, your childhood and really thinking about the things and the people that shaped you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like my grandpa, that's big. If you listen to me for more than 10 minutes, you're going to hear me probably mention something about my grandpa and something he said or some lesson that he taught me.
Yeah.
Right.
Number
7.
Number 7. All right.
Do you have a unique system or process in your industry that could be your point of differentiation?
Yeah. And that's basically that's what we do, really. We're known for the 3 Ds of personal branding: define, develop, and display. And it's a simple process for you guys on your end. It's, quite a bit more complex for us, because underneath that 3, we look at 77 different criteria when we brand somebody. But on the surface, it's really just about defining who you are and who you serve and what sets you apart, developing every part that of your brand, all the branding elements that are utilized to get that message out to your prospects, and then displaying that on all of the ways that you market yourself. And that's pretty simple process, but we're known for creating the formulas around personal branding. It's not just talking about, just be yourself and be authentic. Those are great and they're all true, but how do you do that?
It's got to be practical.
Formula? Right. And so that's one of the things that we're known for. All right.
And number 8, have you created original content of some kind? A book, a pamphlet, a trifold, a podcast,
a TEDx
talk, any kind of intellectual property that is solely yours is a great point of differentiation. And I've seen a lot of people build brands around that, where they've come up with something, and this is what they're teaching,
All right. So number 9 is, what's the one thing that you help your customers accomplish? The one thing. For us, it is really changing the way you're seen so you can charge what you're worth, right? So in business, it's like I learned earlier in my radio days. I had some big money people that were spending 5 figures, 6 figures a month in advertising, and I would go knock on their door. And I got those doors shut in my face, unless I had free lunch or tickets to the big game. And even then, I got doors slammed in my face a lot of times, because who was I? I was just this young thing coming up to say, hey, can you buy some radio ads from me, right? But I realized then that if I wanted to be seen differently, I had to change the way I presented myself. And when I did that, I really changed. I spoke truthfully. It's like, I'm more than just, a young person coming in here wanting to sell you radio ads. I want to figure out what it is you're trying to achieve and how best to tell your story through these radio ads. And when we do that, we change the way people see you. We upend everything. Instead of going to your competitors, they start coming to you. Why? Because we're connecting with them, right? And so those are the things, changing the way you're seen so you can charge what you're worth. That's a lot of what we do today.
Yeah. And so putting some thought in it, what is that one thing that you help your customers achieve? That's big. Number 10, how does that change their lives? And this is probably my favorite one, because listen, if you're not out to know what your ideal customer needs and what you can provide for them, you're not going to maximize your ROI. It only matters to them. It only matters what they're thinking, what matters to them, and how your service is going to make their lives better. How's it going to change their lives for the better? And so this is when you got to put a lot of thought into. And, but it makes a big difference on your point of differentiation. For instance, again, I'm the abundant life broker, right? It's fairly easy to see and figure out, well, what does that mean? Well, apparently he does something with abundance, right? And an abundant life. Okay. Now, obviously you don't know what the rest of that is, but it's easy for me to articulate that I help entrepreneurs, coaches, speakers, authors, real estate agents, any sales forward person to achieve the abundance that they desire in their life, whatever level that is. And that level is different for everybody. So when you're looking at it from how does it change their lives, at a point of differentiation, how does it change your ideal customer's life for the better, is a powerful way to come up with a brand.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, it's all about the individual, right? It's all about us. If somebody's trying to sell me something, immediately, what am I doing? I'm quantifying in my mind, how is that valuable to me? But how is that going to help me? And if I can find the pathway and believe the pathway is going to help me, I'm probably going to do business with this person, right? So if that precedes you, then you're going to have a better chance of prospecting because people already have an idea from your brand that their life is going to be changed by talking to you. Does that make sense? And so that's it's probably my favorite one, honestly, out of all of it.
Yeah.
Out of all the 10.
That's true for me too.
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully this helps bring you guys a lot closer to figuring out what is your point of differentiation. You're going to have multiple, but you need to figure out which one are we going to consider the theme of your brand, if you will, that you're most going to be known for. And also, again, a reminder that you need to know exactly who you're talking to, who are those ideal customers, so that whatever you're known as being different for is very important to them, that they see something in it for them, right? And so that all brings it full circle. So hopefully this helps you guys get a whole lot closer today in this. And I want to say, if you like this kind of content, we love bringing it to you. If it helped you today, please hit that subscribe button. Ding, ding. Okay.
Hit the subscribe and a notification so you know when we go live, even if we're 3 minutes late live.
Yeah.
Right. You'll still know. We were about nearly 3, about 2.5.
Okay.
But anyway,
we appreciate your time, guys.
And hey, you know why we do it, guys? Here at Brand Face, we know that prosperity favors the bold. Like, we don't just think this, folks. Like, we literally know it. Prosperity favors the bold. Be bold, especially with your brand. Put the work in. It'll pay back. I promise you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Miss Tony.
You bet. Bye-bye.